What's up, Coachable family? Welcome back to the Coachable podcast. I'm in studio here at Blue Wire Studios at the Wynn. We got Darren Waller in the house today. Super excited to have him back in Las Vegas. If you don't know him, you're about to get to know him, but he's tight end for the New York Giants now. We miss him over here in Las Vegas from the Raiders, but we're letting them have you for now. But welcome back to Vegas. Thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah. We were just talking about you about to head back to New York.
Yeah.
Get ready for camp. How you feeling?
I feel great. Body feels great.
Yeah.
You know, guys I'll be 31 in September. That's like almost reaching dinosaur status in the league. But
is it? Is that what that qualifies as?
Yeah. By 30, they trying to push you out if you're not really getting the job done. So
Okay.
it's a blessing to still be in it. It's a blessing to feel the way my body feels right now after the last couple of years. So I'm grateful.
Amazing. Well, I'm excited because we were just saying we ran into each other not too long ago, a couple weeks ago at the Radiance Music and Wellness Festival here in Vegas. You and I were both speaking at it along with your co-host of your show, Donnie. Y'all got to interview Modest Yahoo, got to do some really cool stuff there. And if you guys don't know, Darren also co-hosts a podcast called Comeback Stories, which is awesome. It's very much in alignment with kind of what we do here at Coachable, just really telling the stories of people and how they've turned it around, you know? And I always talk about the game of life and how to play it. Like, that's my thing. I talk about most people play defense their whole lives. They never learn how to play offense and move down the field and move towards their goals and their desires. We're always like playing not to lose. But when I heard about Comeback Stories, I heard about like what I consider it's like halftime, when people are like taking inventory of their lives. They're like, hold up, I am down 40 points and this is not where I expected to be. And I need to turn it around. And what am I going to do? How are we going to like strategize going forward? So I'd love to just get your story. I mean, because I know you've told it before, but this might be, and for a lot of people listening, might be the first time they've like actually heard your story. They probably know your name and know what you do on the field.
Right.
But I want to know like the man behind the title and everything else. So tell me a little bit about growing up. You told me earlier you grew up in Georgia. I spent the last 7 years in Atlanta, but like, what was it like growing up in Georgia? And what was childhood like for you?
Childhood, I always tell people like externally around me, there was nothing rough about my upbringing. I had both parents. They've been married for what will be 37 years.
Wow.
At the end of August this year. I had an older sister. We lived in a nice suburb, great schools, sports teams, anything you can want as a kid is around you. But for me, it was always like internally in my mind and just like in my spirit, in my heart from a very early age. I was always very intelligent, but I was also like extremely sensitive and like emotional. So like things would kind of get to me very easily. And one of the first things that kind of got to me and I could never really shake was I was always told I wasn't black enough from like elementary school. And because there's this perception of like being black and acting black and how you should carry yourself, how you should talk, what you should listen to, all those things. And I didn't fit that at all. Like I listened to all genres of music.
Yeah.
I was a nerd as a kid. I was, I just wasn't really, I didn't fit that stereotype or just that image. Yeah. And I took it as something being wrong with me as opposed to me being unique and that being special and that being different. But so yeah, that just it turned me into a people pleaser very early on. I always tell people I became addicted to people's opinions of me long before I became addicted to drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
And I had to force me to just put masks on everywhere I went, like even on the sports team. Like I was nerdy, so I wasn't really like them. And then I was in like, gifted classes, honors classes, and I was like the only black kid in there. So it was like I didn't look like them. And
right.
Everywhere you go, you just feel like an alien.
Yeah.
And all you want to do is just get a thumbs up and be okay, I didn't think I was asking for anything crazy.
Yeah. Did you feel like when I hear that, because I can relate very much to what you just said, did you feel like you were sort of a chameleon in terms of like whoever you're around, you kind of morph and change based on your environment?
Yes, very much so. And I feel like there's actually some good that can come from that because I've learned how to interact with different people where some people in their upbringing, they don't have access to certain races or ethnicities or, they just know their own reality. So I've been able to get to know a lot of people, a lot of different environments, but at the same time, you can overdo that. and you don't really have an idea of who you are and, you know, what you want to be, what your values are. It's always like, how can I fit into what's being on display around me?
Yeah, definitely. When did you get into sports?
Very early.
Okay.
I don't know how I got into football because my dad's from New York. He's like a basketball guy. My mom, they like watched football, but they weren't like football people. And we just kind of landed in Georgia. And I guess I saw something like NFL films on TV and it just like clicked.
Yeah.
And I was just like that was my binge watching back then. Like,
really?
And I could still remember guys' names and stats and all that stuff. But I started playing football when I was 4. Started playing basketball when I was 4.
Wow. So were you a big kid? Like,
no.
Because I mean, obviously you're a very large man. And I imagine like that once you start to grow or hit growth spurts, people just kind of already point you out as like, oh, you're going to be an athlete, or you're going to be, you should play sports because of just like your stature. I was curious if like you were like
I had decent size in like middle school and like elementary into middle school. But once I got to high school, I was like one of the smallest kids.
Really?
Like 8th grade year, I was like 5'4", 5'5" with a size 13 shoe and big ass ears. And I was getting roasted all the time.
Dang.
But yeah, my freshman and sophomore year, I was just like, I was riding the bench because everybody started lifting weights and was way bigger than me. I was like 5'7", like 130. And then I hit a growth spurt like right before my junior year of high school started. That's when I really started growing.
Yeah. So you said that your first kind of addiction was around people pleasing and other people's opinions. I think I know personally what that's like. I know everybody listening on some level can probably relate to looking to other people to kind of tell you who you are and how to be and what is acceptable and what's likable, because we all want to belong. We all want to be accepted. We all want to be loved. Like we all have those primary needs. And I know you've got such a platform where you really talk about these really important topics. So I want to know, like for you, what was it in terms of like your early development where you started to recognize, like, was it that you were getting praise and like you were getting a lot of recognition from people because you were good at these like sports and different things? Or what was it that started your journey of like really trying to make everybody like you or please people, that you kind of lost touch with your internal self?
I think it was a combination of, you know, kind of like how, like I described how I didn't really fit in, but then also, like you just said, I was good at sports right away. Like I just had a natural kind of feel. It was never like I'm like, I know I'm going to the pros, but it was just like it just walked out there and things went well.
Right.
And and they continued to, like I hit some bumps early on in high school, but started playing my junior year and then started getting scholarship offers. So it was like the success came, and I knew, like I said, I was a smart kid. Like I knew that growing up in Georgia and being in the South, like football is religion. Yeah. And it's like, if I'm good at football, then people are going to love me. People are going to accept me. And so I took that love in as if it was like authentic love, unconditional love, when it was, you know, a good bit of it was conditional. There are people that loved me unconditionally. I couldn't receive at the time, but I took the love that I could get and ran with it.
Yeah. It's like, it's almost, you start to learn, whether it's consciously or unconsciously, that I'm loved based on how I perform.
Yep.
Yeah. And so it's like, I have to continue to perform at a high level so that I continue to get the praise, recognition, love, and acceptance that feels good, because we all want it.
Things I'm still trying to shake today.
Yeah. So how did that play out, you know, in your life as you started to obviously get older, get more recognition? You talked about the masks that you wore. What were some of those masks that started to present themselves?
In the football locker room, it's like the tough, like masculine, like nothing affects me. I have no emotions, which also comes with like a womanizing, like, because you're celebrated for your ability to conquer in that kind of environment. So you have to take that on, even though that was very difficult for me to do. You kind of just got to like swallow it and be like, all right, this is what I have to do.
Right.
So those were some of the main ones.
Yeah. And at the time, did you feel like that was inauthentic to you, or were you just trying to kind of find your way and you're like, this is who I'm supposed to be, so I'm going to be it? Or was there an internal like conflict that you had where you're like, this doesn't feel like who I am, but I don't know how else to be?
Yes, I would say that last one. It's like it was like, this is not me. Like this feels very forced. This feels very unnatural, but I don't want to go the rest of my life being told that I'm not living up to the standard or that I'm not good enough. So now I'm going to fit the standard so you can tell me I'm okay.
Mm-hmm. What did that pressure to perform at that high of a level for such a long period of time? Because it's like, once you get the taste of it, it's like, we have to keep doing this.
Yeah. And the hooks get in you pretty early on.
Yeah.
Because I say, like, when I left high school and toward the end of my high school, like, football, it wasn't really the joy that I had when I was a kid. It was all like, how can I get people to cheer for me and all this, like get the love and the respect from that. And it's all like results based. It was never really like any kind of like process based thinking whatsoever.
Right.
And the pressure only mounts up because you go from Ackworth, Georgia in Cobb County to, okay, now I'm going to Georgia Tech, which is in the ACC, which we play on ESPN regularly. So
more
that's
eyes
like
on you.
National audience. And then you go to the NFL and it's like, that's worldwide, like owns a day of the week.
Yeah.
So it's the pressure only continues to mount up. And then it's like, okay, well, the things that I use to cope, like as the pressure rises, my coping mechanisms have to increase in their frequency and their variety as well.
Yeah. How were you coping with the pressure?
I started early on. When I was 15, I started doing painkillers.
How does a 15-year-old go about getting his hands on painkillers? Did you have an injury?
I didn't start with injuries.
Oh, okay.
I did have an injury around that time, but that's not how I started.
Oh, okay.
There's some friends that I played sports with. They're like, they got into their parents' medicine cabinet and they was like, yo, try these. It'll make you feel good. And I was like, most of my life I was like, I'm not going to do drugs and alcohol. Like, I want to do things the right way, like whatever. And, but the way it was presented, it was like, at that time, I didn't really feel good. I wasn't confident because there was no way for me to perform. I was on the bench on the football team or I was getting hurt. And, it wasn't like women didn't really want me at the time. So it's just like a lot of ways where I didn't really feel great about how life was going. So I was like, yeah, I'd love to feel good. And you take it and it's just like, whoa. Like, this is the answer. This is the solution.
And it's tricky that way because you kind of enter into this like alternate reality where you can slip into it anytime you take it. And it makes you feel like superhuman and your fears or your insecurities or whatever kind of melt away. And who doesn't want to feel that way all the time, right? I would imagine that's a slippery slope. How did that play out? How did that progress for you?
My brain is all types of twisted, you know what I'm saying? Like, cause me like suffering from like alcoholism, I feel like it was like I was kind of like born with it too, just off of family history. Like I feel like it was already there. So when I took that first pill, it was like, it was go time. But you start mixing drinks and stuff like that. And around the time that I really started increasing my using was when I started getting bigger, was when I started playing varsity sports in high school and I started getting college attention. So I was like, oh, this works. Like, good things are happening in my life. Like, I don't have to give this up. And so then once you get addicted and I get to college and I got arrested like my sophomore year and my freshman year, I was like, I know I'm not really going to play. I was like one of the lowest rated recruits in my recruiting class. So I was like, I'm just here to like party it up and get a degree and keep it moving. Yeah. So it's, but yeah, it's.
Yeah. I imagine no one starts down that path thinking I'm about to get like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to get addicted. Right. That's never the plan. No one wakes up one day and is like, I'm going to start to be an addict today, right? But it's a progressive thing that if you don't have the tools or know how to cope in other ways, that's your go-to strategy. And it works. And you were saying that like, in many ways, your life was improving and like continuing to get better. But then you mentioned like an arrest. So were there other ways in which that it was actually having a negative effect on your life, or was overall, was it positive for you?
There were consequences kind of out the gate. Like my junior year, I got arrested and got kicked off the basketball team because of like the consequence of being arrested. And I was just like, in pride and was like, fuck that. I'm not going back to the basketball team my senior year. Like they're like asking me if I wanted to come back, and I was like, nah, fuck that shit. And I just like, that whole time before I was gonna go to college during basketball season, I was just drinking, using, like, and kept going down that road. And then, like I said, I got arrested early in college, and it was like none of these consequences phased my using whatsoever.
Really?
And the consequences only continued to rise. And even like good things in my life that were like dreams being fulfilled, things that people would kill for, I was like, I would throw that away in a heartbeat because like, I'm really addicted out here. Like,
sure.
This is not a game.
Yeah. I mean, somebody could hear that and be like, okay, maybe the first time you get arrested, maybe it's a wake up call, or maybe the second time you're gonna like
not at all.
be like, okay, this is probably a road I don't want to continue to like go down. When was that pivotal moment for you? Like when did you have that like we were talking about before, that pause where you're like at halftime, you're like, yo, this is not the way I thought my life was going to be going. In so many ways, you're doing amazing. You're getting a lot of recognition. You're now in the NFL. You're playing at the highest level. People love you. But like internally, there's a dissonance, right? I talk about it in terms of what true success to me, and I'd love to hear eventually what your definition of this is, like having a life that feels as good as it looks.
Yes. I always used to say like to myself in quiet, and then like I would start to tell people, like once I started to get honest, I was like, it feels like everybody loves my life except for me.
That's got to be a terrible way to live.
Terrible place.
Yeah, terrible. I've lived that in a different context, but I've had that same experience where you're like, everything looks so good on the outside,
right?
But my internal reality doesn't feel good at all.
Not one bit.
So yeah, take me to that like moment where you like things started to change.
They didn't start to change until August 11th, 2017. I overdosed on painkillers. I came in on painkillers. I went out on painkillers.
Wow.
And there was a lot of things up to that point where it was like, you think it would stop you. Like I got suspended from the team multiple times in college. I was one drug test away from being kicked out of the school. Got suspended multiple times on the Ravens, and I got banned from the league for a year, 2 months before I overdosed. So it's like, you think like, oh, you get the year ban, like, all right, now's when we stop. I just went even deeper. So it's just like that overdose stopped me because up until that point, I'd had the illusion of control. Like, I got this. Like I can hide it from you. I'm a master manipulator as far as like hiding things, because I'm already kind of like an introverted person back then, and so I could hide things from you. I could pull the wool over your eyes. I could beat drug tests sometimes, and the overdose just like kind of shattered all the control that I thought I had, and I was like, yeah, nah, like I think I'm really doing something here, but my life could have
yeah.
And at that time I was like, I'm going to hell for the way that I live.
Wow.
I was stealing, I was like doing all types of crazy stuff. So it's like my life could have been over with.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and then you're like, okay, no, this is actually, I'm not in control. It's controlling me.
Facts.
At that moment. Yeah. So during all this time, and you're using and you're hiding kind of like who you really are, what you're really going on, and like playing it cool. Everybody else thinks you've got it handled. Despite kind of these different like challenges that you had and sort of like consequences, who's in your ear at that like time? Did you have people like speaking into your life and like trying to encourage you and trying to help you, or were you just like not listening? Or did you have any coaches, teachers, mentors that were like really there with you through all of that?
There were so many people that were trying to be there for me from college. My receivers coach, first and foremost, his name is Buzz Preston. Is his name. He was always on me, like trying to get me to see things from a spiritual perspective. But I was so good at keeping people at arm's length, and it was just like my isolated nature that was already there was just exponentiated.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like
totally.
And pushing everybody away, family, friends, getting into the league, like the general manager, Ozzie Newsome, head coach, John Harbaugh, they were trying to help. They were trying to get in and understand. And I was just like, just not letting people in, because it's like you project. He's like, I don't want people to see me the way that I see myself. And so you don't want anybody to really get close. But as things started to deteriorate in Baltimore, there was a team clinician that we had, who's basically like a psychiatrist. She was very much on my side. The player engagement director, and the team chaplain, those were three that were like really starting to, kind of chip away at me. And then like kind of like once I broke after the overdose, like my mom and my parents had been there the whole time. Like there was just so many people that were there trying to help, but I couldn't allow their help to be effective until I was ready to help myself.
That's exactly what I was like thinking about. I heard someone recently say like good advice, like right advice at the wrong time is the wrong advice, because it's not, it's like until someone's ready to hear it and receive it, it doesn't matter, right? It's going to like kind of fall on deaf ears.
Right.
And sometimes it takes like a lot of the people that come on this show and are now like peak performers, genuinely at the highest level in whatever their industry is. So many of them, the common denominators, there's like a rock bottom moment, you know? And I know this is what you talk a lot about on your show too, is people's, you know, comeback. What is like, how did you start to pick up the pieces after the overdose? Like, what was the rehabilitation process like? Because in sports, let's be real, you get injured, you go to fucking rehab, you go work that injury, you get physical therapy, you take time, pause, do whatever's necessary. We don't do that for like mental injuries or emotional injuries or anything. We just expect people to just handle it, deal with it. And now we're coming into a culture that's more perceptive and open to mental health and holistic health and the importance of therapy and all of those things. But like, what did your quote unquote like rehab journey look like? Did you go to rehab?
Yeah, I went to rehab.
Oh, so
but even before rehab, like for some people that may not understand, like I'm talking about like the disease of addiction and like alcoholism. It's like, I heard somebody say alcoholism is the only disease that tries to convince you that you don't have one. Like, so I come out of an overdose, right? I go see these addiction specialists in College Park in Atlanta. And I do like some testing and they're like, yeah, you need to go to rehab immediately, like dual diagnosis, substance abuse, anxiety, depression, all that. And the first thought on my mind is, I'm like, whoa. I don't need rehab. Like, what are we talking about here? Like, that's for crazy people. Yeah. Like, I'm a Georgia Tech graduate. I'm, going to make $1 million here pretty soon, you know? And that's just like the sickness of it all. But I ended up going to rehab. I went to rehab in Maine. And I was there. I went to detox for 4 days, which was an experience. And then I went to the actual rehab place for 30 days. And it's transformative experience because first off, the ability to take 30 days off for yourself and just remove yourself from life, almost everybody's not willing to do because they feel like they have to keep up with the pace of life and the hurry and the busyness. Like they won't take that time to invest in themselves. And I look back now and I'm like, okay, like people may have been running laps around me and I'm not moving in that time, but what that time did for me has changed my life in ways that I never could have imagined. So it's like learning how to meditate, journaling, group therapy, one-on-one therapy, dragging you to 12-step meetings. It's like, it's literally just like building a new foundation for your character, uprooting everything that was there before and allowing you to start from within, from the spirit and from self before you try to reach out into the external world for success or validation or any of those things, like just starting from within. Yeah. And it just, from then, life's been completely different.
What a contrast to like the before and after, right? It's just like, it can almost be like a shock to the system. I'm sure it was just in terms of like going through detoxing your system is a shock to the system in itself. But it's like, you have one life and then now you have a life that is void of those things that took up so much space and time and energy. And, you know, now that doesn't exist and you've got to learn new tools and ways to be and how to orient yourself and like relate to yourself and life and your stress because stress doesn't just go away. That's the thing. It's like, doesn't mean you still don't have pressure on you when you come out of rehab. It's like all of that still exists. So how, like after those 30 days, like what were some of the tools? You mentioned mindfulness and starting to relate from like a more spiritual perspective. Like what is your relationship to spirituality? And was that developed in rehab or was that something you've kind of always had and has grown over time?
I can say I had it, but I really didn't have it. So it was like definitely I would say rediscovering, like actually just discovering because when I was a kid, it's like you kind of get forced to go to church and I grew up in church. People don't know what black church is like. You be in that mug from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. And it's like church becomes a chore. It's like anything church related is just like, But then it's like, okay, if I do these things, God will bless me. And it's kind of like they kind of paint that picture in some churches. Sure. And so my relationship with God was like transactional. And And I realized that after a while, and I was like, okay, like, and then I'm just like out here living reckless. Like God wants nothing to do with me. And so I just ran away, and then going to like 12-step meetings and stuff. All the 12 steps is just getting you to form a relationship with a higher power in your life, whatever it is to you. And for me, it's like, okay, like I know God is out there. Like, let me try to ease my way back. Like I know he's just waiting to send me to hell, but it's like, I couldn't view God through like a loving lens. Right. Because it started with just, I couldn't love myself. I couldn't receive love from anywhere. And so it's like trying to receive it from God out the gate was tough. So it was starting that along with all of the other tools that I was learning from rehab. And it's just like, I'm just out here like, what am I doing? But I was just able to find some structure, continue to do the things I was doing, and just have a plan after I left rehab. And over time, like things started to change.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting, like hearing you talk about your relationship to God and church, because I grew up in the church too. I mean, from Alabama, you're in the Bible Belt. It's kind of the culture.
Right.
But the way you related to God then sounded like very much like what we're taught a lot, which is God is like judgment. It's like
punitive.
Very much judgment. Like you do this, this is going to happen. And if you know that you're not living the way you're told to live, at least, that you're afraid of the punishment and the judgment. So I'm just going to like run and avoid it and like live in denial and act like it doesn't exist because I don't want to face it. But really, it's like your own judgment. It's not even the judgment of God. It's you're judging you, right? And you think, because you talk a lot about feeling the need to hide. And what comes to mind for me when you say that is just like, if you really saw me, like if you really knew me,
right,
you would judge me as much as I judge me.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's like so scary because we think everybody else is as judgmental as we are. We think everybody else, but like truly, no one is as harsh and as critical as we are.
Plus, they got their own stuff going on.
Of course,
I don't ever take that into account.
Exactly, but we're like think we have the worst problems or we're the worst guy, and we can never be honest about that because God,
heavens no,
forbid. If you really knew the shit I think about,
right,
you would. You wouldn't love me. You wouldn't. And when we're addicted to the acceptance, then that's the farthest thing, like from our minds, like what we would even entertain. So, given that context, as you start to go through rehab, you start to be more honest with yourself. I imagine the people in your lives. What was that transition of like actually getting real with people and starting to orient to your relationships, your friends, your family, from a place of like authenticity? Like, this is really who I am. Was that a challenge? I imagine that it might have been.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Because it's all uprooting that. Like, I wish I could do like a 12-step breakdown, but it's really just like a summary of it would be like recognizing that you can't do this in your own strength, inviting the higher power in, doing an inventory of yourself, of all the defects and the bad habits and just the self-centeredness that accrued over time inside of you as a result of your addiction, admitting those things to people, becoming aware of all the different character defects that cause you to act, even if you're not on drugs and alcohol, but cause you to act like you are. Pretend, and be in the same behaviors. And then you do right by other people by going to make amends. And then from there, it's just like continuing your spiritual experience into prayer and meditation, and then like being of service to other people. So it's like, but first you got to start with like the nitty gritty and getting into all that and realizing like you're the common denominator in everything that is happening in your life that you're not a fan of, that you're like, ugh, like, but when you take ownership, you realize like, if I'm part of the problem, then I can also be part of the solution. And it takes a little bit of a while to get there. You got to feel the sting of everything. Like at this point, like my character was basically like, if I want to change the way that I feel when I was using drugs and alcohol. So it's like any type of emotion, like I don't want to feel that if it's not good. Yeah. But then it numbs out all the good emotion too. So you got to learn how to feel again.
Yeah.
Even the crappy stuff.
Totally. I mean, it's interesting. I wrote down something for a different interview today that I thought I was going to use in, and I think it's actually way more applicable here. So I'm curious to get your insights on it. But I imagine as a byproduct of kind of continuing this pattern of addiction, one thing, Pete, I don't know if you know who Peter Crone is. They consider him the mind architect. He works with a lot of athletes across all different, and just like peak performers. He's really, really amazing. And he says something about addiction being you can never get enough of something that almost works.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Damn.
I'm like, yeah, it's like,
wow. Yeah.
It gets you so close to what you think the thing you want, but so you keep coming back for it. You're like, maybe this time it'll give me the thing. And it's like, shit, that's so real. But as a byproduct of continuing to do that, I imagine you probably like broke a lot of trust with yourself and with other people, being like, I'm going to get my shit together this time. Like, I'm going to stop doing this. And then you don't, you go back. And you said something about make amends, which made me think of this. Because as you start to rehabilitate and you're like coming back into your life with this newfound kind of perspective and approach and a plan, how do we learn to how do we gain trust from people and with ourselves after we've kind of done the thing over and over and over again? And one of the things, there were like kind of 5 steps that this guy talks about is like, how can I trust again and accept somebody's promise instead of their pattern, right? And he gave 5 steps, which is 1, acknowledge what happened. 2, make amends. 3 is like acquire tools. Have they like actually gone out and acquired tools to do things differently? 4, they've taken accountability and they have accountability like built into their lives. And 5, they accept the boundaries that are necessary for you to move forward. And so I'm curious for those, like, does that relate to any of the ways that you started to reestablish trust with yourself or with other people, where it's like, how do I know I'm not going to kind of go back to the ways that I was, like the things I was doing before?
I feel like it started with abandoning this idea of getting trust back from other people or getting back on right terms with other people, and just working on myself. And then to the point where it's like, if I'm really consistent in who I say that I am, they'll take notice of that.
Yeah.
It'll be clear as day. And then like, I won't have to worry about doing something different.
Yep.
Now that trust is back, I just continue to be who I am and who I'm becoming.
Yeah.
And letting that go is key, because it's always like, until you're willing to let that go, you're always going to find a way to manipulate it. And it's like you know who you are as a manipulator now, and it's like you're going to get back to the same place and be like, man, I haven't changed one bit. You're going to get back to crushing yourself. But one thing Donnie always said about confidence and trust with yourself, it's kind of like the 4 agreements of being impeccable with your word, and it's all confidence is keeping the promises you make to yourself.
Right.
And like, if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to follow through on it.
Yeah.
And if you do that consistently enough, day in and day out, and don't grow weary in doing that, don't get like, okay, like I've done it for 3 days now. When are you coming back to trust me again? Like, it's just abandoning the results of it and getting into the process of just the fundamentals of trusting yourself, which is, you know, if I don't believe me, nobody else is.
That's so good. That's so good. It's like giving up the external result of the need to be in the good graces of everybody else and be like, do I like me? Do I like it? Like, do I like how I'm showing up? And I can't remember who says it, but like every choice we make is a vote for the person we want to become. So it's like, I think about that a lot in my life, my own life. I'm like, this thing, I could do X, Y, or Z. Like, which is the thing is going to like make me more of the person that I want to be, the person that I know I can be, versus the thing that can give me some pleasure in the moment. Right.
Right.
But I think that's really an important piece of recognizing that you don't need to fix the trust in the relationships with all these other people as much as you need to establish that like evidence for who you are and who you're becoming. And as a byproduct of that, that trust is reestablished.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that carries over to so much of life. It's like, even if you look at my football career, I never went back. First of all, I didn't even really want to go back to playing football again. But
really?
I went back into it and I was just like, you know, if I'm going to do this, like, why don't I do this right? And like the way I built a new foundation in recovery, build a new foundation in football. And it's just the way that I approach like drill to drill, practice to practice, workout to workout, week to week, and approach that with all my focus and all the presence in my mind, and give it all I can. And if I never play in the game again, I never play in the game again. But I gave this process everything that I have, and who I'm becoming is, you know, more important than the end result,
right?
Per se. And then, but voila, all of a sudden, like I was able to have another opportunity, and I was ready for that because I let go of the result and focus so much on the process. But if I was just sitting here like, man, like I got to get back in the game. When am I going to play again? Like I'm not doing nothing until I play again and then I'll get back to work.
Right.
No, like it's the complete opposite.
That's so good. Okay, I have a question. When you think back to younger Darren, what are the words you think he needed to hear when he was like, at the time when he was like most struggling? Like when you were like felt the most lost or most just like confused or hopeless or whatever it was. Like, what do you think? What would be the things he needed to hear then that you would tell him now?
I think the most effective would have been to go back to 5, 6 years old and just say, don't be afraid to be different than other people. Because, you were given a unique calling and a purpose for you. Like we already have enough of them. There's already enough people trying to be the same person or follow the same, be a part of this culture that, isn't afraid to break free and be themselves and leave their own imprint. Like, don't be afraid to do that because you're going to see these people that you think are cool and they're going to be burnt out. They're going to be exhausted. You're going to see the real version of them and it's not going to be what you thought it was before. But if you stay true to you and who you are and what you believe in, what you enjoy, what you like, your life will be so much better. And when you look in the mirror, you'll like what you see as opposed to you can do everything for everybody else and they like what they see, but then you go home and you ride in that car by yourself or you look in that mirror and you don't like what you see. That's not where you want to be.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I know that like you wouldn't be doing like the show that you're doing. You're on a bigger mission than just playing football. Like,
Facts.
What is that mission?
I would say at its core is to give people hope that their mistakes don't disqualify them. Their failure isn't like a person; it's like an event. I guess you could say. Because I've been arrested 3 times, have been suspended or kicked off of every sports team since high school. If we're going off of mistakes, then I'm fucked. But that doesn't have to define who you are. You still have something to offer, no matter how long your list is, no matter how many people have written you off. There's still an opportunity for you to be a person of impact and a positive impact in this world and live a wholesome life and enjoy your life in the process.
Yeah. How is your life now? I know you recently got married.
Yep.
You're going back to camp right now, still playing football. Like, how is life post some of the quote unquote, failures you've had? What is it like now?
It's been amazing, First and foremost, just me from a spiritual perspective, I feel like my relationship with God continues to expand. There's moments where it's tough and like I still feel like the whole view of like judgment and all that. And it's like, it still feels like just more like a business relationship sometimes with God when it's really like, okay, I need to really get into this mode where I can receive all this love. But there's been so much progress since I got sober. When you look at my football career, it's taken off in 2019, 2020 were my best years.
Yeah.
And then, the last couple of years, probably like a year and a half, I've been injured a decent amount and it hasn't been the same level of production. So it's just because like my life has turned around doesn't mean like it's going to be like rid of adversity.
Sure.
So I'm learning that it's adversity is going to be like the core part of most of my life. And it's going to be about how I respond to it each and every step of the way, as opposed to like my performance and everything. And so just going deeper into that mindset has freed me from that. And it allows me to go into this new season and not have to put pressure on myself to, I got to be top 2 again. I got to be all, none of that stuff matters. Be the best. None of that stuff matters. It's like, it's all about like how I feel about me. And being married has been amazing. There's been adversity in that, moving across the country, they're being distant early on. So, but I'm grateful. These are grateful challenges to have, it's sometimes I heard a friend say your blessings can stack so high they can start to seem like problems. And it's like if your perspective isn't refreshed consistently about everything that's loading up in your life, that your plate's getting more and more full, you can kind of get lost in the sauce. But my life is great as long as I don't start to just trip and just get lost in anxiety, man. Like my life is great.
Yeah. That's such a good point is what you just said about when your blessings stack so high, you think they're problems. It's like this ability to zoom out and like connect to gratitude and remember like how good we have it. Like even somebody who's not in the NFL or has a beautiful wife or has an amazing life, and like even people who are in the middle of their comeback and they're just trying to turn things around and do things a different way. I think there's so much power in being able to zoom out and be like, I'm here. The fact that I'm going through something hard is a blessing, like, because I exist. And I watched a video yesterday, actually, and it was really powerful. And I can't remember who it was that was being interviewed, but he said, I got to a point where I learned to be grateful for the worst thing that ever happened to me.
Thanks.
And he was basically saying that like, that even the thing that you wish never happened, he's like, I'm glad that it happened because it means that I lived through it. Like to exist is a gift, even if you're going through something really hard. What would you say to people who are like in that season where they're in the like thick of it? We're like, I don't know how I'm going to turn this around. Like maybe they've just accepted like this is all life's going to be. And like, what do you say to people who are on the cusp of trying to make a big change in their life and come back in the second half? Like, how do you encourage those people?
There's so many things to say. I would say, when you're in it, it's hard to see, but we live in a world that's like so divided, and people are always trying to find things that are different about some people and things but the thing that we're connected on and that could never change is like the adversity that we face. Like no matter how good somebody's life looks on the gram, like how many material things they have, like they're going to go through something and they're probably going to hit a moment where you are right now. And the greatest thing you can do is to push through that and to be able to offer your experience. Yeah. Like your experience is going to be valuable one day. Like there's a book we read in the meetings. It says your darkest part of your past can become your greatest asset. And that's true. Like if you don't look any further than me, like you have all the evidence that you need. Like I would never plan on coming out and talking about I overdosed and I could have died. And like I wasn't planning on talking about that. But now I look back and it's like, that's the greatest thing I have to offer. Not the way that I catch a pass or how much money I make, none of that. It's about how I transform that adversity and that pain, that darkness into something greater, because everybody's going to face something like that in their life. And if you can offer somebody that, there's nothing greater that you could give to another human being.
I totally agree. How's this like changed your relationship with like your teammates and the conversations you guys have? And like, do you feel like you're able to connect with people in a deeper way or not? Is there still like some level of persona that you have to keep in the locker room and all of that? Because I mean, they probably see you out here talking about all these deep things, meaningful things.
I'll be thinking about that sometimes. It's like the people I wonder, like my teammates are like, oh man, he kind of like he's so deep, man. Like I can't, like I gotta look into. I gotta look at myself like. Well,
I feel like people think about that. With me, it's like because of what I do, there's this expectation of like, oh, if I talk to Tori, I either got to talk about what the shit I'm going through or something I learned today. You know what I mean? Like there's an expectation. Do you feel like it's changed that at all?
Not really. Like I feel comfortable in my own skin.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel that way for a long time. And one thing that I'll do is I feel like I kind of have a decent feel for is kind of like throwing some vulnerability out there. Like of myself and like seeing who kind of like jumps on it, like, but really just like who comes into the conversation, because those conversations are the best. They're most fulfilling. And it's like, you leave those conversations like so bonded to other people.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that is often my approach to it. It's just like you share something, whether it's super vulnerable or just like honest or whatever, and just real. Like I'm just being fucking real with you about what's going through. It's like, it's this invitation for deeper connection if someone chooses to take it, right? And it's like the people that are ready or want to connect on that level will take the invitation and show up in that conversation. And then it's like, you have like such a more meaningful moment or bond or like connection with those people. And I would imagine and assert that there's a deeper level of like trust in a like with your teammate, somebody that you're like playing on the field with, and you're trying to like, you know, I don't know how does that translate on the field?
That's a very real thing. It's you see these teams out there that do great things. It's like at its core, there's relationships there. There's between everybody involved, from the front office, ownership to coaches and players. It's like it's one thing. Like guys want to be around each other. It's not about somebody getting a result where a coach can get a job and all these, and a player can get this and that. It's about being a part of something that's bigger than yourself. And then when you go to these dinners and you sit in the lunchroom and you sit extra time in the sauna and you just sit in the locker room and talk to guys, and you know these types of conversations start to happen and you just get to know people. It's like when things get rough out there on the field, and it's like you have an opportunity when things aren't going your way to maybe like give up or let up off the gas. It's like you're more likely to do that when I don't know him, or like I don't have a relationship with him, like, or he talks to me a certain type of way. I see how he acts, but it's like if it's somebody that's like, oh, I know what he's going through. I know he's trying. I know he's giving everything that he has. Like you're gonna like run through a wall. As people would say, like you literally will feel that way. I felt that way about particular coaches in my career, certain teammates. It's like I just don't want to let him down because I know what he puts into this. I know the type of guy that he is. Like I'm riding with people like that. You know?
I talk a lot about in my clients and on this show about who's in your huddle. I say that meaning like who do you have on your team, metaphoric team, that's like speaking into your life, that's on your team, that's like that, whether it's coaches or mentors or teachers or friends or community, or like who's around you that is encouraging you, that sees your blind spots, that can hold you accountable, all of those things. Outside of your team and your coach is like, what does your huddle or your support system look like? Like who are the people that you've intentionally or unintentionally like put in place to like help you be like the most successful that you can be?
My wife first and foremost, without a doubt, she's number one in that. I'm my sponsor. He's like essentially like a spiritual mentor.
Amazing.
My therapist. Those are like my top three. That it's like, you know, and then there's other guys that, you know, I go to meetings with and have like, you know, guys that are seeking after God. That can, you know, they can tell me about me, and if I see something in them, I can bring it up to them, and it's like it's not like a me trying to point something out. It's really just us trying to do this thing together. But it's like I got my top three, and then you know, form better relationships with my teammates. Now I've only been there a couple months, but I can see just like how cool of an environment that is, and how those things will only start to grow. And then from a football standpoint, those people can hold me accountable. They can build me up, and vice versa. So it's starting to become more well-rounded. And, you know, something big about me is I was able to, some of my best friends in Vegas are people that are outside of football. So
really?
It's like being proactive and finding those relationships outside of the game as well. Because I'm moving to New Jersey. I've moved a lot. And a lot of times when I move, I'm like going out here to meet these people. Like I naturally like, if I have any excuse to just isolate and be by myself, I'm gonna take it. But I gotta get out there and form some of those relationships there as well, because it keeps me well-rounded.
I think that's important, and I'm glad you shared all that, because I want people to hear that it's not just like people can see you and be like, okay, he's got his nutrition locked in, he's got his workout locked in, he's got all these things. But like to really succeed at the highest level, it's not just physical.
No. Like I always tell people my early career, like in Baltimore, before the suspension and all that, to post, like there's a little bit of like refinement and technique and experience that has helped elevate my game. But the talent that was there, it was not much different. It's all in here, all in the mind. Yeah.
There's a book I started reading recently, 177 mental toughness secrets of the world class. Have you read that? Okay, I need to get you this book. I meant to bring it. I was just like going to give it to you if you hadn't read it, because I think everyone needs it. And it's just like, it's almost like one page. It's like, 177 of them, I guess. And they are incredible. So this is the plug. Go get the book if you want it, but I'm going to send it to you. And so many of the things that you shared today on this show are in that book. Like, and I think it's really important for people to hear someone like you who is like operating, playing the game of football, but just life at a different pace, a different level. You're not, I've never gotten the like feeling from you that you wanted to be mediocre or average in any way.
Right.
But it's like, how do you go to the next level? You get support. Like, and that looks like therapy. It looks like friends. It looks like community. It looks like having hobbies. I know you also are a musician. You do things outside of football.
Yeah.
People might not know about. You come from actually a musical family.
Yep.
Tell me just a little bit about what the outside of football looks like for you when it comes to like the music.
Yeah. So it's like, even to build off of what you just said, it's like I've never strived to be mediocre or anything. Like I strive for excellence and like want to do everything that I do great. But it's like not being great and successful at the expense of like my peace and my enjoyment of life and just my overall well-being. So it's like things outside of football help with that a lot. Music is the biggest one. It's something that I started doing in like 2015. I could do a whole music story as well, because it's like when I first started doing music, there was in college guys would play like instrumentals and they would like guys would freestyle at parties or something. And my brain moved way too fast to be a part of that. You had to have free flow, and I was too anxious at the time. So I was like, if I write stuff down, I could be okay. And I got drafted to Baltimore, and I was like, you know what? I'm just about to start writing. And I started rapping on GarageBand on my laptop, plugging in the iPod earbud headphones and rapping into the mic in the in the ear pods, and just kind of continued the journey from there. But now it's something that I feel like I've only continued to get better at and continue to do so. And it's just the joy of it. Like you said, it's in my blood. Like, that's why I do it. Like I got introduced to who my great grandfather was and his impact my senior year of college. I had a jazz history class, and the professor was like, "Yo,
wow,
you're here right now. Like you need to pay attention. Like I know you don't know none of this. You need to pay attention." And from there, it just started my music journey. And now I love to make a wide variety of music, because I love good ignorant hip hop music every now and then, but I also listen to piano and alternative rock and gospel music. So my music reflects that in all the different forms that my songs take. And it's just a great balance, because football takes a lot from you physically, mentally, emotionally, and music just fills me back up. I could go home with my laptop open and start making the beat, and I'm just like a little kid, man. Just
I imagine it's an awesome form of just like expression too. Just like a cool release to just be able to like either write about what you're going through or what you're feeling, and have like your own kind of just like safe, cool space that you can like jam out on your own. I come from a musical family too. So when I heard that about you, I was like, that's really dope. Yeah, that's really dope. Dude, I just want to say thank you, first of all, for just like saying yes to this. I know you have a ton of shit going on. You're about to get ready to go back to New York. You made time to stop by the studio. I just really appreciate you, your message, what you're doing, how you show up, who you choose to be every single day. It makes a real difference. You're showing people that their worst decisions don't define them, and they really have, if they so choose, an amazing, beautiful future. And so just want to recognize you for that and say thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me. This was fun. This flew by.
Yeah, I know. It really did. And I know you got to go work out, get ready for everything you have coming up. What are you excited about? I know you've got a foundation that you have. Is there anything you want to plug or talk about? Anything you want to say to people before we wrap up today?
Yeah, of course. Foundation, Darren Waller Foundation. We're aiming to support the youth with substance abuse problems. Sending people. We've sent almost 60 people through 30-day rehab stays on scholarship, and have them in aftercare and just transition into the rest of their life. Looking to expand the work from Vegas to the tri-state area out on the East Coast.
Oh, yeah.
Got the Comeback Story season 3. We start releasing new episodes August 3rd.
Cool.
Training camp's coming up. Check out the New York Giants. We're working. I'm always recording new music. You can expect something in the fall.
Where can people find that? Are you like...
Just search my name on Spotify.
You're on Spotify? Yeah. Hell yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
A few projects on there. And if you see me in the street, say hello.
All right. Okay. You heard it here, guys. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for another week of tuning in to the Coachable podcast. This is where you get to hear from some of the best experts in the game so you can level up your game in life and business. Don't just listen to this, go apply something you learned today. And if you got a lot of value out of it, please leave us a rating and review. That is one of the best ways you can say thank you and make sure this show continues to grow and reach as many listeners as possible. Till next week, go be coachable. We'll see you next week on the Coachable podcast.